I'm Felicia. I worked in arts administration for a really long time, and my favorite thing about it was that it was really easy when you met someone new or you had to talk to people, and they were like, "Oh, what do you do?" to like spin it and talk about other people. So I was talking to my husband, and I was like, "How can I spin this to talk about other people?" So I'm going to talk about other people. So several years ago, Becca Day made some collages that were absolutely stunning. And if you know Becca Day, you know everything that she makes is absolutely stunning. And they were just like really simple, minimal, very elegant collages. And they were made of junk mail and political mailers. But they didn't have any kind of, if you didn't know, you wouldn't have known. And I looked at them and I said, oh my gosh, these are absolutely stunning. I want to make this. Because I've always loved collage, and I've always loved just how different it is, how it can sort of span from very, very minimal to very, very complex, crazy surrealism to like very, very minimal. And but I've never felt really confident in it because I had a very preconceived notion about the process of making collage. And I don't know why I had this preconceived notion, but it got me really stuck. And so I decided I was going to take a collage class with Cass Mullane, who I also get to talk about. Cass is here. A Cass class, if you will. And we started out by making really minimal, really simple collage with just several elements, building into more complex, and then building back into more simple. And I said, hooray, I've arrived. I figured it out. I learned that there wasn't a specific process that you had to do in order to create collage, because in my head I thought, you find an element, you put it down, you find an element, you put it down, you find an element, you put it down. And I don't know why I was in that mindset. I don't know why I thought that it had to be okay, now it's down and you're married to this piece that's down. And within that class, I came to realize somehow that you can put an element down and put another element down and keep putting things down and then glue it all down. You don't have to glue the first one down and then glue the second one down and be married to the fact that you already put that first one down. I don't know where that came from. But I have always been a planner in my process. I know from up until this point, start to finish, what the pieces were going to look like. I would draw things out. I would know from the beginning to the end. And so for me, I had gotten stuck in collage making in that concept of not knowing what it was going to look like. So through that class, I discovered the ability to not glue things down, which is miraculous somehow, and felt a lot more confident. And so then in our very last class, in that class session, it was a 4-week class, we went from doing minimal abstract type collages into using imagery. And I have always loved crazy surreal collages where people are cutting heads off of things and putting bodies onto things, and animals that are also forks and stuff like that. But I had never felt confident with that either because I didn't know where to start. I felt like if I couldn't see it start to finish, then I didn't know what I was going to do and I would just get stuck. And so when we started our surreal collages in that class, I had some postcards that I had from just a package of cards that I had gotten with all kinds of different images and stuff. It was just like a big ephemera package. And I said, okay, well, this is a place to start. And it gave me an anchor to start. And that was when I made my first one, which was called No Harm, No Foul, where I had a flamingo with a hand coming out of it, which was in the gratitude show at Kreuzer. And I also made Barking Up the Wrong Tree, which is in this show, which is the green. And it just gave me a starting point. And so now that's where this was born from. The postcards gave me an anchor, a place to start, and I was able to find a way to produce collage with sort of that starting point. And so also with that class, I had committed to not buying anything. I was only going to use stuff I already had, like the cards that just so happened to have those postcards in them that were landscape type postcards, and junk mail, trash, whatever paper or things that I happened to have or that were gifted to me or that someone, because I just didn't want to buy anything. I have, in the last few years, started to get a lot of anxiety, personal anxiety about my own art practice, and I was really sort of stuck in it because I kept feeling like I was just making more stuff and making more stuff, and I kept thinking, oh, there's so many artists, so many people are making things and saying things, and they have such important things to say. I was like, I don't have anything important to say, just be making more stuff. And so coming into the concept of using trash was really satisfying, and it really, I think, is probably the #1 reason why I know Gundy said when that I brought everything in, and I said I love every piece, was that I felt safe making every single piece. Every single piece in this show was made with something I already owned, something I purchased used secondhand, or something that was gifted to me, or trash. Like, is there trash in any? Yes, this one doesn't technically have trash, but the background, the dark background on this one is from a little booklet from my husband and I went to the Bacon and Bourbon Festival in Breckenridge last year, and that's from a booklet that I took from one of the bourbons. So everything in here is something like that. And it made me feel okay to be making things again. So that's where all of these came from, trash. Becca Day took some trash and made some beautiful stuff, and I was like, I'm gonna do that too. So, thank you. I feel like that might be all I was thinking I was gonna say. So for all of these, what happened in the class that I took was I did start with color. So one had flamingos in it, so I gravitated toward pink. The other was, I think it's like cactus, so I gravitated towards the green. And so that, starting with the postcard, having that anchor, then finding a color is like my jumping off point. So like this one was yellow, and then this one has a secret. Oh, yes. So this one, I started with the postcard, and sometimes I start with the postcard, and sometimes I start with an element in it where I look at it and I say, oh, I really want to use that. So I'm going to try and find a postcard for it. And so she just felt like she went with this and the flowers, and then I have all of my materials sorted by color. So when I find something and I say, okay, well, I'm gonna just do yellow for this one, then it's like, here's the yellow folder, and I can pull things out of the yellow folder and look at it until I'm like, okay, this works with this, this works with this, this works with this, done. Some of them, I have one back there where its color is red, but it also has a lot of blue in it, and I had started trying to do blue with it, which wasn't working. So I put everything back, and then I went to the red, and I started with the red, and then the red just sort of came together. So for me, it's really weird being the person who had known up until this point, start to finish, what things were going to be, because now I have no idea what they're going to be, but in a safe way for me, because I do have that theme of like, okay, it's going to be yellow. So like for me, they don't really say anything. Like whatever the story is in it is whatever the story is in it. Like everyone is going to see something in it that speaks to them or doesn't speak to them, and what I'm saying through it isn't something that I'm like trying to say. I don't have some big, message that I'm trying to portray. For me, the most important thing is the materials and the messaging for me personally of using used materials, stuff I already have, secondhand materials, and like for me having that safety of being able to make things. So long story short, yes, color. That is also interesting because I used to have titles in my head, and then I would make pieces around titles. The titles sort of came to them while they were in process. So this one, Side Chick, was, I actually did some reading about titles through making these pieces. My husband called it Side Chick while I was working on it. And I was going to come up with titles for all of them. I have in the past titled things based on song lyrics or like lines in poetry, pop culture references, quotes, and things like that. And so they were all going to have titles that were idioms, and that was going to be my theme for these titles. And so Barking Up the Wrong Tree is the first one that got a title. This originally had a title that was an idiom, but then I was like, no, this one is Side Chick. Like that's what we call it. We call it Side Chick. And so I was doing some reading about titles and why things are titled, and what I learned was that titling didn't really become popular until big salon-style group shows started to become a thing because they needed to be able to inventory things. And so having work that was titled sort of came about like factually. And so because these had working titles, I was like, I'm not gonna title it what it's not. Its working title is what its title is. So these were sort of a mishmash. Mostly they're titled what my husband called them while I was working on them, like Flatware Fairy, he titled that one. But then some of them, I'm trying to think too, Cecilia is a reference, not to Atonement, but it is a reference, a personal reference. So they're kind of varied. And I guess with these in the process, it was in the process. Usually what he called it, sometimes what I called it, but yeah. So it sort of was born with them. It wasn't something that came before like I used to, and it wasn't something that came after. Like I don't know a lot of people, but I do know people, they create the work and then they're like, that is called that. I use an X-Acto knife. Yes, just the number 11, what you would think of as a traditional X-Acto knife. I have a little pair of scissors that bigger things tend to be easier to cut out for me with scissors, and then little things with the X-Acto knife. Tweezers are probably a good idea. I use my nails because I feel like I can really get in there. It's slow, but I also really like it. I had talked to Marissa about it at one point because she also does very meticulous work, and I said it's like carving. I feel like I'm kind of sculpting out from the page what I want, and it's kind of fun because there are times when I'm like, do I really need that little tiny like asinine piece of this? Like I don't want to deal with cutting that out, and I just chop it out because I'm like, I don't want to deal. Yeah. But yeah, I bought, before I was asked to do a show, I had bought a whole bunch of fancy different, some that like have a swivel and some that are really tiny, but up until this point I hadn't used them, and so I didn't want to, when starting a show that I had a minimal amount of time to do, I didn't want to start playing with new tools before I knew what they were going to do. So these were, yeah, just scissors and what you would think of as a typical X-Acto knife. Well, I've started working, I have 2 pieces that are currently in the works. And they are color based, again, themed, focused, just because that's what's comfortable, I guess, right now, and I really enjoy working that way. And I have enjoyed working on them so much, and so I feel like I've done work in the past where I start to not enjoy doing it, and I just feel like I'm kind of churning stuff out. And so while I'm enjoying it, it's kind of nice to be like, oh, this is a fun thing that I'm doing. And so just gonna see where it goes. Go with what speaks to me, and they're kind of like spooky kind of Halloween stuff, which I know is kind of cliche, but I'm also kind of excited because it's becoming that kind of season. And in my head, I was like, oh, I don't know, should I do this? And I was like, yes, I want to do this. Like, I want to make cheesy, cliche Halloween stuff, then I'm just gonna do it. So that's fun. I'm enjoying that. I felt like I was not in the world. It was very surprising. That was not at all anything I would have ever expected, especially having it be the first time that I have ever made or shown any work like this. And I'm very thankful that people have seemed to resonate with them, because it really does make it that much more validating to me, that I had struggles, and then I did find something that did feel like it was safe for me to be making, inside my anxiety brain, and then to have other people sort of be like, yes, good work. It was like, okay, yes, it's something that I do want to continue to do, and I do want to, continue to pursue, and I do want to continue to speak about. So crazy, absolutely crazy. Thank you.